Hello, all. Time again for another episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Andy, who's doing his first read of Worm. Andy, how's it going?
Well, it's been one of those times where I wish I was a parahuman and had stuff that I could tap into to be able to resolve problems. But as we've seen in the story, sometimes you end up making more problems than you had in the first place. So maybe it's just as well. Um, we'll be reviewing Arc 14, Prey, chapter 6 to 9 this time. And as far as new business, we have some comments from YouTube.
We sure do. We hear first from Freak Circus. And Freak Circus says, the scene of Siberian chasing Panacea is definitely amongst the creepiest in the book. I'd still count what they do as cannibalism, since it's a person using this figure to consume humans. Her being a projection also takes away any chance of Amy protecting herself. After we saw her encounter with Bonesaw, she at least knew she had the power to take any close-range fighter apart with a single touch. But there is nothing biological to Siberian. Nothing for her power to latch onto. I'd say Mannequin was also an equally bad match for her. All his organs are encased in an inorganic shell. And next we hear from Megafire 7. And I think this is alluding to the conversation we had around Skitter's observation about Tattletale being what kind of a cult leader she had the potential to be. So let's see what Megafire has to say. Oh yeah, Taylor. Lisa totally doesn't go around breaking people down and then building them back up into who she wants them to be. Anyway, how was your descent into villainy seem to be treating you? Also, congratulations, Andy, on your correct prediction. I liked your comments on Taylor and most of the other people involved here still being teenagers. So her not exactly great handling of serious emotional issues when under stress makes perfect sense. And the fandom can sometimes be a little hard on her in that regard. What do you think of what Megafire has to say?
Well, yeah, it's the descent into villainy is interesting. I really like those kind of stories that kind of have like alternate realities. You know, what if the person had chosen this, or what if the person had chosen that? You know, you have different skills and different talents that everybody has, and how their life would be different. And so when an author provides a glimpse like that, one of the other characters notices, it's like, oh yeah, I definitely could see that. I might have mentioned this in a previous episode, but back in the day when Bill Clinton was president, he was kind of a polarizing figure, and there were definitely plenty of folks that were not a fan. And one guy who was very anti-Clinton interviewed him, and he said within a couple of minutes of being around him, he was like totally changed into liking him.
Sure.
And it was just the charisma that Clinton had. And you wonder, yeah, if Clinton had been in, some third world dictatorship or whatever, how scary that would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how that could happen. And yeah, regarding the teenager stuff, I think anytime we're talking about heroes or people with powers, there's just this kind of assumption that all their stuff will be leveled up, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times, just like we see with sports stars, they might have just amazing abilities on the field, but just at the end of the day, they're just, young men and women, and they're getting through life just like everybody else. And in some cases, it's even harder because they can be kind of put on a pedestal or given favorable treatment and not really know how to not take advantage of that, or how to deal with it. So yeah, I try to keep it in mind, though. I can't imagine being a teenager with superpowers. That would have been scary.
Yeah, this actually sparks a question for me to ask you. Since you were more into comic books than I was, not knowing what kind of, if you ever did the teen superhero type comic books. How do you compare and contrast Wildbow's ability to write teenagers versus, if there's a superhero teenager that you might have followed? Anything you can compare against?
Sure. Yeah. So I watched or I read the old Spider-Man, and Peter Parker,
Mm-hmm.
of course, was in high school
Yeah.
when that got rolling. And, he really struggled with it. He had all the same teen things, and you just think, well, I've got these powers now. That'll solve all that, right? It's like, no, I got all these other problems on top of it now. And in some cases, it's a nice escape in the sense that it's like, well, I don't know how to deal with this situation with these people at school. I know how I'm not supposed to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go pound on some criminals that it's fairly obvious what I can do to them. And so yeah, I think Wildbow does a good job. I mean, the big difference is that in a comic book, there's so much less depth. There's just not
Mm,
enough time or space in a comic book to dive into this kind of thing and into motivations
right.
and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think Wildbow follows the pattern of, wow, powers would be great. They'll solve everything. And then it's like, oh no, my life's even more complicated. And so
Yeah.
um, definitely see that here.
Well, cool. Because I had a pretty limited frame of reference to compare Wildbow's work against more traditional, I guess you could say, teenage hero type stuff. And that question came to me spurred on by Megafire's great lead in. So once again, we are thankful to those folks who are contributing to the conversation and getting our brains working in different ways. So thank you guys. And we'll move on to our review for this episode, beginning in chapter 6 of Arc 14. And we are immediately brought back to the battlefield. Weld is trying to get his wards in position to deal with Crawler and Mannequin. Everyone's just come out of the geometric dimension that Cash had them in, and we're still waiting for Clock Blocker, I believe, to come from his time stasis. Weld begins organizing the team. They form a line to defend Glory Girl. Miss Militia gets the adult heroes into the fight against Crawler and Mannequin. And Skitter, from her perch atop her newly named beetle Atlas, surveys the scene and asks Weld to see what she can do to help.
Yeah, this was pretty interesting. It's great to have the mobility and everything, and it definitely adds to Skitter's potential to help out with things. She had been dropping the bombs and everything, and now she's out. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, well, what else? And then Atlas is great, and she's definitely getting a good feeling for her, but trying to carry somebody else out, that's going to be a big challenge, and she's trying to figure out how to handle that.
Yeah. Glory Girl is just immobilized practically with pain. Um, it was, I don't know, clever, but an act of desperation to see if she would fly, to see if Skitter could in fact ferry her to safety. It ended up working out okay. It was scary. I mean, Weld just launches Victoria at Skitter, who managed to catch her and then communicate with her through her pain and get her to at least fly and follow Skitter's lead and get her back to Panacea, where she could begin working on her.
Yeah, that was a pretty amazing catch, considering that Skitter hasn't had much experience working with Atlas or flying, period.
Mm-hmm.
And to have to try to figure out the geometries and match velocity, and realizing she has a small window and being able to catch her at all is pretty amazing flying on her part. But yeah, thank goodness Glory Girl had enough, was able to hold it together enough to fly a little bit anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and get them where they needed to go.
I mean, and also you add to that the fact that the Skitter had to avoid this incredibly
Oh,
dangerous, caustic poison, this venom that Crawler had spit onto Glory Girl. Just so good catch on her part. And as I said, she does get her to safety with meets up with Panacea, the Undersiders, and the Travelers, and Panacea starts trying to go to work on her sister and realizes is stunned at what this poison is doing to her body.
yeah, and Glory Girl doesn't even want to be helped. I mean, even
Yeah.
though so much stuff is happening to her and she's got to figure she's pretty close to being dead, her hatred is so strong that she's just like, yeah, no, I don't. If that's the only way I can live, then forget it. It's kind of like, dang,
Mm-hmm.
that's harsh, but yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess you can understand it. I wouldn't want anybody messing in my head. I mean, that's one of the big things that kept me away from drinking and other things, was
Mm-hmm.
just that, man, I don't know. I don't want anything poking around in there, or changing how it's in control. So, but yeah, it's pretty shocking, I guess, that Panacea, who has all this knowledge, starts looking at this stuff and is just like, oh man, I don't even know if I could do anything.
Yeah, as I was prepping for this episode and covering this chapter again and getting a more and more appreciation for Panacea's power, um, I wondered how much her power is. How much does her power educate her, as it were? I mean,
Mm,
she wasn't born a physician.
right.
She wasn't handed she didn't memorize a medical book or anything like that. I mean, I believe at one point it said that she has early on when we first met her, says she's an honorary doctor, or has an honorary
Mm.
doctor's license. But one wonders how much her power is feeding her the knowledge of these enzymes and lipids and everything else like that. I mean, to get a little bit deep in the weeds as far as the biology goes.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right there. And just like any power, I could imagine Panacea early on, exerting or wondering what she can do, wondering what the limitations are, and then kind of almost like watching a movie of it. It's like, oh, so and so has a broken limb, and you get this picture of, her visions penetrating the layers down to where the bone is, and
Mm-hmm.
then her, this glow around the break, and seeing the bone fibers starting to knit back together and fuse, and what's being drawn from her power, what's being drawn from the body to do that, and over time, just kind of learning more and more about how all the building blocks of life work together, and then seeing something that's totally like unlike anything she's seen before. Yeah, all she can. Well, yeah, carbon's in there, I guess, but
Yeah.
I don't know what else is going on. This is messed up.
Yeah. Again, the limits that Wildbow can place on heroes. She is Panacea is limited by the building material,
Hmm.
biological building materials that she has at her disposal, that the person she's healing has, and we get a little bit of that, where Skitter offers to bring some basic insects over to her to use as a placeholder for Victoria's rebuilding her body. She's going to need food to replenish the nutrients to build, as the human body needs normally. Panacea can't make something from nothing, and Glory Girl needs these things, and so it was kind of clever of Skitter. Well, maybe not clever because Skitter came to this idea because she was going to feed her people bugs in a pinch, but it was clever of her to retask that thought for this desperate situation.
Yeah, she definitely seems to be using that kind of thinker mode again and trying to,
Mm,
pull in anything she can to try to fix whatever situation. She starts off with something that's, if you watch medical dramas, is somewhat common. It's like, well, maggots can
yeah.
eat dead flesh, and that's a way to, clean
Mm-hmm.
stuff up. But then she kind of extrapolates from that and says, well, what if, you just use, yeah, them as a source of whatever you need. And yeah, everybody gets a little bit grossed out. And, I kind of had flashes of the movie The Fly from back in the day.
Oh,
Glory Girl is, some kind of
yeah.
weird
Oh, gosh.
bugborg, as Regent says.
um, setting the physical issues and damage of Glory Girl. Set that aside for a second. How to phrase this? How messed up is what Panacea did to her mentally? How messed up is that if you've got Regent turning his nose up at your actions?
That is pretty harsh. Yeah, it's and this is typical of human interactions and rationalizations. It's we all do things at times that we regret or that we think, well, yeah, that probably crossed a line in some way,
Mm-hmm.
but at least it wasn't this. There's always this comparison or trying to rank things, even though it's kind of like, well, yeah, maybe you didn't do that, but what you did was still bad.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm sure Regent, because he had to come to it so early, had to soothe his conscience in some way and kind of say, all right, I either need to accept that I'm the worst human being ever, or I need to just look at my dad and say, well, I'm not that bad. And so
yeah,
he's kind of, developed that as a survival trait. And, he recognized that what Panacea did was horrible on a level that he never got to. But on the flip side of that, Panacea was coming at it from a whole different angle. She felt isolated. She felt overwhelmed.
yeah.
There was always healing needing to be done, and it just was always, hey, you can do this better than we can. Come on, and it's like, well, this takes a toll on me, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody was trying to help her with that. But then, she does cross the line, and you wonder how intentional it was.
Yeah,
There's
hadn't
things.
you? I'm sorry, hadn't you speculated it was almost a reflex, an involuntary reflex when Glory Girl went in to hug her as a sister, and because Bonesaw had got her to operate on her adopted father's brain, suddenly, I mean that she used that muscle once and
Hmm.
it involuntarily flexed again. You still hold to that. Am I characterizing your position correctly?
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't. It's kind of like when you were a little kid and you figured out where your parents hid the birth or the Christmas presents.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, once you found out, you could tell them, you could look and try to figure stuff out. There was all sorts of things, and then, you kind of you realize that, oh, well, I figured this thing out, and it's just kind of a cool thing to figure out. So, like, what else can I figure out? And
Mm.
and the whole power that Panacea has is all about trying to how to heal.
Yeah.
And and sometimes I can imagine that just by pushing the power into an area, so to speak, it's kind of like, oh, well, this needs to go. Oh, wow, did I do that?
Uh huh.
It's so yeah, I mean, 95% involuntary, I guess I would say. But, she just had this deep longing as well. And, uh, that probably spurred some on, I guess, a little bit.
Tattletale makes quite the effort to try to get Panacea to undo what she had done. And I think you're going to have to help me with this. So I'm a little irritated with Amy for not heeding her opportunity to heal or to undo the mental changes that she had done. Tattletale was trying to, I think Tattletale was definitely in the right here in trying to encourage her to fix what she had done. And yet Amy kept pushing back against that, or maybe not pushing back, but making excuses as to why now wasn't the right time to do it. Or am I missing something in the reading here?
Well, I think Amy touches on it a little bit. And let me see if I can find it here. But she says, that it's been a while since it's happened.
Right.
And the brain is constantly changing. And even with all the stuff we have now, nobody really knows how the brain works.
Sure.
People come up with abstractions to try to explain certain things, but there's always an exception. They'll say, well, this half of the brain controls this, and this half of the brain controls that, and then somebody will lose a giant chunk of their brain because of a brain tumor or something, and somehow the brain figures out how to rewire and do everything anyway.
Yeah.
It's a super complicated system, and so it's one thing to go in and muck around with something and then put it back right away, and it's another thing to have to come in much later after the fact. So like what you do for your work, you'll have a component of something and it needs to be shaped or ground or some kind of manipulation done to it, but it's part of a much bigger assembly.
Yeah.
And so you're working on that component, and that's all well and good. But if they came back later, while after it was built into the whole assembly, and said, now we need you to grind a little bit more off of it,
Yeah.
you'd be like,
Put down the
well,
crack pipe.
yeah, exactly. There's no way I could even get to it,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, I
don't
see
know
that.
if in the process of heating it up, how much it's going to affect the stuff around it, and something might warp or be degraded in some way. And so and I'm so I think that's what Amy was getting at, was just that there's so many connections made after the fact that
Mm-hmm.
she risks screwing something up or making it worse. But I'm guessing also that there's going back to the presence in the closet, she knows what she can do. So maybe she could go in and erase that Amy, or that Glory Girl even knows that Amy did it.
Mm-hmm.
She could go in and make it the way she wants it, and so that Glory Girl doesn't even know it's not what she wants, and she's worried about the
Oh.
temptation of doing that.
Oh. Wow.
I don't know. I'm totally speculating there, but once
Interesting.
she's gone down that path, it's like, well, I learned something that time. I could make it
Mm-hmm.
better, and so I that was how I read it.
Okay. Okay. No, thanks for that. No, I hadn't even thought about that from that angle. After resisting Tattletale's request and insistence that she try to fix her sister mentally, she says, "Look, we're gonna go." She turns. I don't want to say zombie, but she hypnotizes effectively Glory Girl so that she can lead her around, so to speak, and get her to function almost as an automaton. And they go to leave, but before she does, she informs Skitter that she put a end date, if you will, on the
Yeah.
bugs, the relay bugs, and on Atlas. Now, on the one hand, I get it. I mean, Amy was a hero, Skitter is a bad guy, a villain, and so she didn't want to hand her something that this villain could use to terrorize, from Amy's standpoint, I'm sure, further terrorize the town. So there was a sell by date on the an expiration date on these creatures that she created for us, for Skitter. I get it, but I also definitely understand and appreciate Skitter's anger at the fact that this new no, I think pet's the wrong word, but this new
ally,
yeah, the sidekick of hers has an expiration date. Definitely was shocking and probably hurt.
no doubt. I see where Panacea was coming from. I'm kind of surprised that she had the forethought to kind of do this in the midst of everything, but that's her shtick. She knows how to build things and fix things, and applied it to this and thought, well, okay, I can put in some fail safes here. But yeah, it's not like it's a nuclear bomb or something. It's a flying beetle. It's not like it's gonna totally tip the balance of power or something. So
Right.
it did seem kind of heavy handed. And if I were Skitter, I would have been pretty upset, because Panacea can kind of say, well, it's either going to be done or it's not going to be done. And it's like, well, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy over there, Clock Blocker, who is just putting people in stasis for periods of time. So maybe, who knows? Something goes in stasis, and then I come out of stasis and Atlas is dead because you put this failsafe in there. So yeah, I would have been mad too. It's pretty cool though that Gru's able to try to come up with a workaround.
Yeah. It was what's that saying I like to use? If necessity is the mother of invention, desperation is the father. And Gru was like, hey, I can try this. I think I have a bit of an idea how her power works, and I might kill Atlas, but I can offer you trying to do this. And it ends up, for now, it seems like it works. It's Atlas now has a weird as it sounds, this giant Hercules beetle has a human digestive system, apparently.
Oh man, yeah. I just got this immediate mental image of, Skitter sitting on the floor of her lair with Atlas there with, like a burger and fries.
I was just thinking the same thing.
It's
you
like,
got, McDonald's sitting down there.
Jeez. He likes milkshakes. I don't know why, but he does. So Bruce like, oh, was that me? He'll only eat Captain Crunch. What's up with that?
Right. So she does have to watch Tattletale. Fortunately, was like, hey, if this works, you're gonna have to be mindful of his diet, which makes sense. We don't know. This is a created life form. There is no owner's manual for this. So be careful what you feed him. Watch him carefully, and see if we can make it work. After Amy and Victoria take off, the team gather themselves up and start heading out looking for the remaining members of the 9. And that takes us on into chapter 7, where they head out toward a couple of the Endbringer shelters. And the team debates on the best way to split up. There's 2 targets, 2 shelters, and the team decides or discusses the best way to split up and to track down the Jack and Bonesaw.
And, maybe this is just me, but since we know some of them are dying off, can we start calling them like the Butcher Shop Bunch or something? So that we're not stuck on the 9, because, it's like, hey, let's keep track that we're winning a little bit at least, so.
Anyway, they do decide to split up here. Tattletale and Gru and company head to the shelter where Skitter had her confrontation with Leviathan. Kind of a callback there.
Yeah.
Skitter argues for splitting up and saying, hey, look, I can go check out the library. I'm on Atlas. I can use my relay bugs to get a sense of the surroundings long before I'm in Jack's range. Gru, of course, is like, what are you talking about? We shouldn't split up. Don't be reckless.
Yeah, it's just the same old song and dance with these two.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the difference is that now Skitter has a much better chance, I think, of doing reconnaissance with Atlas and with the relay bugs. It's like the old Star Trek days. Who's got the better long range sensors, the better cloaking or whatever. And you know that the even though the nine have plenty of firepower left, they are still on the run. And they've been taking a beating, and they know they're being ganged up on. So this is definitely not their. They prefer to catch people unawares, and they kind of mentioned that maybe he could do that by being a sniper sitting out somewhere, but it's one thing to be a sniper when people are kind of unsuspecting. It's a whole nother thing to be a sniper when everybody's out looking and knowing there might be a sniper.
Right.
I don't know if you remember playing like 1942 or some of those old war games, and it's one thing to let the battle be going on and you to go camp somewhere and
Mm-hmm.
pick people off. But it's a whole other thing if you're the last one on your team and you're the sniper and you're running around trying to stay alive and everybody's coming to get you. So
Yeah, it's a whole different game.
for sure.
We do get what I really like, a chance to see Legend in action. So after the team splits up, Taylor uses her relay bugs to recon, as you said, and she locates the fight with Legend and Siberian. And Legend's doing some. Again, I would just love to see this on the screen. I mean, this would be extremely cinematic to see this fight. Siberian's carrying this truck with one hand. Legend's shooting out all these cool laser beams that are bending and going around corners and coming back at people and stuff. And
Right.
Skitter was trying to assess what he was doing. It seemed to make sense, if you think about it. If we don't know it at the time initially, but if Siberian's carrying her creator in that truck, and all Legend has to do is keep them from settling and giving them a chance to rest, maybe you could win a war of attrition that way.
Yeah, and there's always the chance that, there's a miscalculation, and she lets go of the truck for some reason or whatever, and then he's able to, act on it. So yeah, it makes sense. It's keeping your opponent off balance, hoping they'll make a mistake.
Skitter is kind of useless there, but she does. I mean, as far as being able to directly aid in the assault, but she does get her bugs inside the truck and discovers that the truck is empty.
Yeah, that was quite a shock, but she finds a way to let Legend know.
She's getting pretty handy with this bug skywriting here, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty helpful. Unfortunately, those kind of messages go both ways, and so it's an advantage that doesn't last a whole long time. But it's good that they know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, her versatility. She's really becoming more and more versatile with her bugs there. So the bulk of the Undersider Traveler's assault team gets to the one Endbringer shelter, discover that there's no one home, and so obviously the nine are at the location where Skitter is with Legend, and so she signals that information to Legend. They begin an assault on them. After Legend does this cool thing and blows down the door to the shelter, Skitter flows in her swarm and her capsaicin chemical delivery system bugs are deployed. I mean, these are the nine. We don't care. We want these guys taken out. And also, she tries another clever ploy, trying to see if that gas that Bonesaw generates is flammable. It was worth trying anyway.
Yeah, and that's another thing that would have been fun to see. These bugs ferrying along little smoldering bits of Kleenex to see if they
Sure.
could get something to catch fire. But just I just got this picture of explosions and debris flying everywhere, and then this gentle kind of harp music as these bugs are in the midst of it, just carrying little chunks of
Mhm.
Kleenex along.
So after Legend blows the doors off the shelter, and Taylor uses her swarm to get in there, he dives into the shelter. Siberian gives chase. Did you figure out what was going on when he went in there and grabbed the civilian and then flew back out? Could you figure that out before the plane showed up?
No, I mean we'd heard that Piggott had a two-step plan,
Mm-hmm.
and so we figured there was another shoe that was going to be dropping. And then when Legend was kind of trying to just keep Siberian off balance, you wondered, well, maybe that's coming or whatever. But then, yeah, when he flew in there and started, trying to get people out, then it was like, oh, okay, well, I figured it was getting close.
And so yeah, he blasts his way out of the building. Skitter realizes something's up and calls Tattletale and is like, "Hey, there's more coming. You guys back off. Go find shelter." And a stealth bomber comes in and drops another payload. And this time, it is apparently the bulk of what they had left from Bakuda. All kinds of madness going on down the street.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary that they kind of do them all at once. I don't know, maybe their tinkers were good enough to kind of evaluate them and realize there wouldn't be side effects or interactions, but I'd just be worried that you'd create something that would just start melting everything. I don't know.
Yeah,
Who knows
see,
what could go on?
I because one tinker doesn't know how to use another tinker's tech, if I'm not mistaken, and someone in the comments help me here. So I agree with you. It's not like Miss Militia can pick up Bakuda's bombs and know what each one does, can she? So somebody let me know if we're missing the boat on this. Anyway, the bombing mission is a success. They take out Mannequin and Crawler. Clock Blocker managed to keep Mannequin. He tagged Mannequin, tethered him in place. Crawler apparently was so thrilled at the idea of them possibly hurting him that Piggott sent word through Weld to Crawler's like, "Hey, we're dropping all this crap on you. Maybe it might hurt you. You might want to stick around. You might be able to evolve some more." And that was apparently enough for him, but things didn't work out.
Right. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the comments I made about Sundancer in a previous episode,
Oh, right.
how bad it would have been if Crawler had survived. It's
Mm-hmm.
good thing that they got him.
Yes, definitely. Let's see here. So this moves us on into chapter 8. Legend does tell Skitter to keep the rest of the group from coming because they're coming to the area because they're afraid that Bonesaw may activate the Nine's penalty to against Brockton Bay. Because at this point, they broke enough of Jack's rules for this sick little game of Survivor that Legend and the PRT folks are like, you know what? Hey, chances are they see that they're going down in flames, so to speak, and they're probably going to hit us with this thing, this penalty, which they do. Skitter rejoins the team, and that's when they see this red plague spreading across the water. Weird, terrifying. What other adjectives do you want to add to that?
Well, I think those are pretty good. Yeah, it's definitely unnerving. You just don't know what it could be doing, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down in any way. I really got to point out this comment from Skitter though, where they're trying to figure out how to deal with it, and she says, "You can't plan for this. I'm growing to hate tinkers.
Yeah.
People with enhanced senses and tinkers and fire manipulators." Oh, sorry, Sundancer. And it's I'd totally be the same thing. It's like, can't I just, fight somebody else who flies or something? I mean,
Right.
let's just can we get a vanilla villain around or a parahuman? Does it have
Yeah,
to be all this?
more Uber and lead, if you would, please, and less lungs.
Exactly.
But Wildbow's like, yeah, no.
Boring. Now let's
Exactly.
throw something else in here.
Exactly. So yeah, this miasma, as we're
Yeah.
calling it, they speculate. I believe it's Tattletale speculates that Bonesaw probably put everything in place, and all she needed to do was to add the catalyst, which makes sense, and it was extremely fast acting. Turns out that they couldn't outrun it. They tried to climb up the buildings to get to higher elevation, but the mist from the miasma was rising, eerily crawling up the side of the buildings. It overtook, I believe, it was Gru and Bitch and Company first, despite Alec trying to use Shatterbird forming a glass dome around that crew. That didn't help. Tattletale and Trickster and Sundancer and Skitter tried to escape. Skitter, yeah, she's on Atlas, but she's there watching her friends get overcome by this mist, not knowing what doom awaited them.
Yeah, this is a tough situation, and I would have thought that Pigott would have tried to plan for this in some additional way. That I mean, she's got bombers ready. Why weren't there helicopters ready, or something to try to help with evac in case something did start happening? But I guess to Skitter's point, how do you plan for it? You don't know what it is. They were thinking maybe it's in the drinking water, and so people were drinking it. It's like, well, you can't turn off the water supply.
Yeah, and the only people who were privy to the warning about not, I'm trying to think back here, when Skitter and Company ran into the 9,
mm-hmm.
and they were told, don't drink the water. Did they share that information with the PRT?
I don't think remember. So.
No. So their group, the Travelers and the Undersiders, were the only ones who were like, "Hey, don't drink the water," right?
Right. Yeah, because she speculates later that when Legend seems more disrupted, that maybe he was drinking the water and somehow he was affected more.
Sure. We don't know that's the case for sure, but it's a reasonable supposition, I think, given what we know thus far.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so that moves us on into. No, wait a minute. No, we're still in chapter 8. Sorry about that. So Skitter is above after seeing all her friends on the building tops they're on overcome by the miasma. She goes over to where there's a bunch of laser beams firing off, and she sees Legend, and her swarm sense are telling her something's not right. He's firing down at teammates. People are yelling and shouting at each other. Weld is trying to avoid other teammates, and she has no idea what's going on at first, and then only realizes that he must be under the effect of this strange fog.
Yeah, it's one of those classic like horror movie type things where people are acting weird, but you don't know why. And so you're trying to figure out, talk to them, and then, yeah, they turn out to be a pod person or something. And
Yeah.
oh great, it's on me. So and sure enough, yeah, Skitter gets captured and brought into it, and then next thing you know, she's in the miasma as well.
I do want to step back just a little bit at the point where right before Sundancer is overcome, when she and Skitter are alone on that building,
Mm.
and Sundancer recounts to how she hates being alone. She's always been with people, whether her mom when she's in all those after school activities, and then later with her friends, even before they were in costume, I guess. Do you want to this does this paint any more of a picture of the travelers for you at all?
I hadn't really thought about that, but I guess I could see that. I was thinking that maybe they were in a foster home together or something, and then one of them got their powers and did something bad, and they all triggered because of it, or something else triggered all of them, and something horrible happened, and so they have the secret that they're bound together by, if you will.
Yeah, because several times they say that almost like a litany. Remember the promise that we all made to each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that. I know we're still learning about the travelers and whatnot, but that particular section had kind of stuck with me. So, Skitter ends up being caught in a miasma because Legend pops her in the back with a laser. Or wait a minute,
Mm.
was it the laser or the chunk of building that Vista threw at her?
I think they were about the same time that you know, I think Legend popped her, and then Skitter was down there and then saw Vista, and Vista panicked
And folded
and
the folded the building over on her. I was just gonna
made her a
spit
little
that out.
building burrito. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at least she didn't crush her. I mean, she did it in such a way that the concrete formed around Skitter and trapped her and didn't, mash her. For what that's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that is the theme through this whole section, is that people are fighting, but they're pulling their punches. There's they're it's more like they're trying to defend themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or preemptively strike and prevent people from attacking, but they're not taking each other out. So there's some wrinkle here. It's not like everybody's in a killing frenzy, so to speak, which could have been something. If you make all the parahumans instantly go to, kill or be killed mode, and they all just duke it out and take out everything, that would have been pretty creepy. But this is even more insidious in a way, that it's all right. Well, they're fighting, but they're not really into it. One thing I do want to hop back to, though, was
Yeah.
something that they said when they realized Siberian had survived, along with Bonesaw and Jack, and they figured out who Siberian was
Yeah.
by the tattoos on his hands.
Right. Legend recognized the tattoo, a cauldron and a swan.
Yeah, and so the cauldron we've seen before, but has the swan come up? I couldn't remember a
Nope.
reference to that. So
And Legend didn't share that information with Skitter either.
right.
So
So
something's up.
yeah, so it seems like somehow he's involved with at least the same group that Battery was involved with the cauldron stuff, but we don't know what the swan means yet. Okay, I just wanted to. That was bugging me. I thought
Okay.
I missed something.
All right. So once Skitter gets knocked onto the building and she begins to get affected by the miasma, how did you like Wildbow's approach to that descent into agnosia? I believe is how you say that word. It just kind of dawned on her slowly what her mind was beginning to miss. How'd you like that?
I like that a lot. And I think, you know, Skitter has a leg up on this a little bit in that her power is interacting with, albeit very small, but other brains. And so there's parts of her mind that are connected to that network all the time. And so she's able to say, and so to harken back to what we were talking about with Panacea and Glory Girl, there's all sorts of brain connectivity that's gone on
Mm-hmm.
that even somebody like Bonesaw couldn't really account for. You know, she knows how brains work in general, but there's always variations, and Skitter is definitely far out on the variation side with this bug interaction. So it's almost like a data backup, if you will, where she's got these breadcrumbs in her brain that kind of are like, well, okay, this was there, and this, all right, I can. And so she's able to pick up these threads, whereas somebody who was maybe a tinkerer or just a blaster,
Mm-hmm.
you know, probably somebody like Legend, they don't have that, and so maybe that's another aspect of why certain people are more just reactive and just trying to fight their way out of it, and others are trying to think a little bit and trying to figure
Mm-hmm.
things out.
Interesting idea. So Skitter, she tries to, as she's falling victim to this thing, her first instinct is to try to help people, which is a very Skitter slash Taylor thing to do.
Right.
And she questions, well, I'm drawing a blank here. Is this person someone who deserves to be helped, or are they someone who's actually a criminal, or am I helping someone in the nine? And she struggles with this right up until the point where Tattletale calls out to her.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty surprising. I didn't think that, you know, what are the chances that she would just bump into those folks, especially after they're hopping off of buildings and stuff and trying to teleport around and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I had no idea where this was going.
Mm-hmm.
This caught me by surprise here quite a bit.
Skitter runs into Tattletale and Gru, quote unquote, and they decide they're going to go and continue trying to locate the nine. Tattletale gives her power, tells her what she thinks Bonesaw's chemical attack against the city might have caused, and describes how it would function and would work. It would work through a filtration or gas mask, and there really wasn't anything that could stop it, and it could form brain lesions and this and that. So it sounds like anybody who's caught in this thing is in deep danger. They try to go find Panacea, and that's the next step in the plan, and that takes us on into the final chapter we're going to cover this episode, which is chapter 9. This was a pretty interesting chapter. As things go along, they're being tracked by someone. Skitter tells Gru and Tattletale that they are being followed by someone, and she devises a plan using her bugs to stop them. What were your thoughts at this point in this chapter? How were you seeing things?
Yeah, it was really tough to get a handle on it because what Tattletale said made sense, but it didn't totally ring true. And then, Gru's reactions also kind of made sense, but were a little bit off. I didn't really pick up on it at all the
Mm-hmm.
first time through, but then preparing for this, I reread it again, and there was a little hint that Wildbow gave us at the end of chapter 8, where Skitter swears and then Tattletale says, "Don't swear." And it's like, I didn't catch it the first time, but the second time I'm like, Tattletale didn't care about swearing, but there was one person who was upset by that a lot.
Yeah, see, I was actually pretty proud of myself because that was one of the things that normally I missed in this story, but I actually caught that in my first
Nice.
read. And I spent most of this chapter 9, go, oh my God, that's them, isn't it? It has to be them. It has to be
Oh,
that's got to be Bonesaw.
nice. Yeah. And then the whole interaction, where they're really pushing Skitter to kill the person following them.
Right.
And then the manipulation, so I could totally see there that it's like, yeah, that wasn't Gru, he didn't act like that, but yeah, Jack is definitely like that, trying to find the buttons to push and the levers to throw and get people to do what they want, do what he wants. So,
but there was enough Taylor Hebert in there, even being victim of the miasma. There was enough of her in there to say, no, I'm not just going to up and smoke somebody with this gun.
yeah, yeah. So that's pretty good. And even from the beginning, she could be pretty ruthless, but she wasn't just a cold-blooded killer,
Mm-hmm.
and she always objected to that. So yeah, the agnosia, or however you pronounce it, didn't make it so that she was just, yeah, wasting people. And even the other people were like that too.
Mm-hmm.
They were fighting, but they didn't know who was on their side, and so nobody was just wiping out other people.
As we get into the chapter, Gru and Tattletale get Skitter to call Coil, and they're trying to figure out where Panacea might be. Coil, being wise and having been informed by our Tattletale about their communication code, tries to deploy that, but poor Skitter, not recognizing names or anything, unfortunately, she can't understand. She can't respond in an appropriate fashion because of the effects of the mist.
Yeah, this was a challenging thing, and I don't know if it because it was happening in real time, or if Coil, was trying different paths and decided this was the best path to go. But it seems like, they could have come up with something different, because it doesn't work out very well.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It almost is like, well, Coil's, well, I'll just have to take it on faith kind of thing. So they dial up Cherish, and Cherish is suddenly just the as she says, she's the poster child for teamwork, because she knows what's going on. Her power tells her exactly the scenario that Skitter is in, and she surreptitiously communicates something to Gru and Tattletale.
Right. And that's another thing where it's like, well, wouldn't Coil have, you know, you'd think he'd have the resources that he'd be able to figure out Latin.
Well,
Um,
yeah. I think she was right for throwing shade on him on that.
yeah, yeah. So, and I didn't catch it this either, that she was pretending to talk to Skitter and Coil, but she was really sending the message to Bonesaw and Jack. But they got the message loud and clear.
Yes, they did. And so when that moment where Wildbow writes that Skitter gets it, that was another one of those bone chilling moments where she gets it. She's trying to keep herself together and not show that she gets it to Jack and Bonesaw, so that she doesn't immediately get sliced down.
Yeah, that's definitely another one of those horror movie type moments where it's like, oh, that sound behind me is the monster. what can I do about this without just getting munched instantly? So, but yeah, she's pretty ruthless. She just grabs Bonesaw for the human shield.
Yeah, hey, I ain't mad at it.
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
not mad at it.
If I had to have like my top 10 human shield candidates, Bonesaw would be at the top of the list. Yeah.
So Cherish throws humanity under the bus, essentially, and communicates to Jack that if he leaves the city, the world comes to an end. And yeah, okay, well, hey, message received as far as I'm concerned. Skitter hangs up the phone once she realizes how badly this phone call has gone, and that's where she grabs Bonesaw, flings her around, and starts trying to use her as a human shield. Did you figure out who the person was who was tailing them? Could you tell by this point?
Not at first, but once she mentioned that they broke free and then moving at high speeds and throwing punches, I was like, oh, well, Battery's got to be following her. So
yeah. Skitter uses her swarm sense and tells that Battery's battling a bunch of Bonesaw's spiders. Jack actually cuts her.
Yeah.
That was I think I went past that one. He does get a pretty good lick on the side of her face with that knife.
Yeah, she was lucky to have lived. I mean, Jack could have easily thrown something straight through Bonesaw, figuring that Bonesaw would be fine. And
sure,
so I think this is him playing again, and just trying to keep the excitement going. Doesn't want to end things too quickly. But she could have been sliced to ribbons, I think, without too much effort.
So now the race is on. Jack and Bonesaw escape. They know where Panacea is. Skitter hops aboard Atlas, and that's where we're we bring things to a close for this chapter, for this episode, even that horrifying last few minutes, and quite the cliffhanger we have here.
Yeah, and that's quite a line there at the end of chapter 9. I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking in terms of minimizing the damage when we lost.
Right.
So, everybody's affected by this agnosia. The bad guys know the worst information they could possibly know. And so, it's like, is the world going to end tomorrow, or is it going to be in a few years? That's the only options on the table, it looks like right now.
Yep. To be continued. To be continued.
Yep.
So this is where we'll stop for this episode, folks. In part 3, we will finish the arc. Andy will give his overall impressions and select his choice for key character of the arc. So please join us for that. Thanks for being here with us once again. We definitely appreciate you all spending time with us. Stay safe, and until next time, take care.
And I hope that as I continue to read this, I get a little bit better at picking up on Wildbow's clues on the first reading. But kudos to Keith for realizing right away that Skitter was probably walking with Evil Dumb and Evil D. But oh my goodness, it's hard to know how this is going to turn out well for anybody. But I'm anxious to read it, and we'll talk about it next time.
Thanks for joining us in this video. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more information in the link down below. Catch you later.